In this video, we'll be talking about the idea beginning with the end in mind. First, I'll explain why it's so important to start with the end in mind, and then I'll teach you exactly how to use this technique. I want you to close your eyes right now and imagine your 80th birthday. Imagine the faces of all your friends and family and the people you have worked with as they come to greet you for your birthday. They are all here to honor you and your life. Imagine what would you like them to say about the person you have been. What will they say about your character, your relationships? What will be your biggest achievements? Hey friend, and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Dan, and in this channel we explore the strategies and tools to become more effective and productive. If you're anything like me and you're always eager to learn more about productivity and performance, please consider subscribing to the channel. And now let's continue with this video. So imagining your 80th birthday is the first exercise of visualizing who you want to be in the future. And the idea behind this exercise, by picturing your 80th birthday party clear in your mind, you will find what your true definition of success is. When your friends are speaking about you, do they mention how you were a great student, how much you had helped them and the community? Did your family talk about the kind of person you were, what principles you lived by? Did your children talk about how yours was the coolest presentation on career day? Did they talk about how much fun you had as a family? By keeping this picture in your mind at all times, you can know who it is you're working towards being. This idea of your future will give you a direction at all times. So first, let's dive a little deeper into the understanding of why it is essential to begin with the end in mind. Ask yourself this: how would you know whether you've succeeded, failed, or reached somewhere in between if you don't know what you're aiming for? Often we find ourselves achieving victories that are empty successes that have come at the expense of things that were far more valuable to us. Stephen Covey sums it up in this quote: "If the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster." We may be very busy, we may be very efficient, but we will also be truly effective only when we begin with the end in mind. So ask yourself again, what do you want to be when you grow up? That question may appear a little dull, but think about it for a moment. In fact, ask yourself this: are you, right now, who you want to be, what you dreamed you'd be, doing what you always wanted to do? And be honest when doing this exercise. Today we are working harder than ever, but without the clarity and vision of where we want to go, there is no way to get very far. This idea of beginning with the end in mind is based on imagination, the ability to envision in your mind what you cannot see with your eyes. It is based on the principle that all things are created twice. That is, the mental creation first, and then a physical creation second. The physical creation follows the mental, just as a building follows a blueprint. If you don't make a conscious effort to visualize who you are and what you want in life, then you empower other people and circumstances to shape you and your life by default. To put it simply, if you don't choose where you want to go, someone else will. This idea of beginning with the end in mind is essentially a way to push yourself to take the lead in your life. You decide which direction the ship sails. It's about connecting again with your own uniqueness and then defining the personal, moral, and ethical guidelines within which you can most happily express and fulfill yourself. So beginning with the end in mind isn't necessarily about what you'll recall by the time you're 80. But in fact, it should be something you think about before you set out to achieve anything. So let's discuss how you can do this. Before you begin working towards something, ask yourself, what is the purpose of what you're trying to achieve? What outcomes do you want, and why are these outcomes important to you? Most importantly, why are you about to do what you are about to do? By answering these questions, you gain more clarity about where you want to go. Your actions aren't just actions for the sake of it, but everything you will do will be towards fulfilling a purpose. And when you have this clear picture, you can start to answer the questions about whether you've succeeded, failed, or reach somewhere in between. At every point, you can begin to evaluate your progress and actions with the end in mind. When you are pulled forward by an endpoint that you created and that you were really excited about, you can end up with everything you've ever wanted without having to give up anything good. A good way to get started with visualizing your end goal is to think about where you want to be and write it down. Take a moment to think if there is something in your life you want to achieve. Maybe you wanted to get fit or admitted to your dream college. Maybe you want to work towards getting your dream job or starting a business. Or it could even be something like working towards having a better relationship with your parents. Whatever it may be, think about where you want to be and write it down. Ask yourself questions about why you want to achieve this. what you will gain and which part of what you gain is important to you. So go ahead and write it down and keep coming back to it. Once you've written down what your end goal is or where you want to be in, say, a few years, you can start to work backwards from there. While writing down the end point that you envision for yourself, remember that it doesn't have to be something like a job title or an annual salary or some kind of standing ovation. It can also be the actions that you want to do on a daily basis. This is where Isaiah Henkel, a doctor and a Fortune 500 consultant, started. He created a wish list of daily actions. In this list, he wrote down things like traveling the world, speaking publicly, learning from lots of different scientific disciplines, writing books, creating businesses, and connecting with people in a meaningful way. Once he had mapped out his endpoint, he worked backwards from there to write down a few key outcomes that he would need to achieve in order to live that lifestyle. He wrote things like getting a job that required public speaking and allowed for a lot of travel. He wrote down that he would finish the first draft of a manuscript by the end of the year. He continued to work backwards from there by writing down a series of benchmarks or checkpoints that he needed to hit in order to achieve those outcomes. Now, of course, if you write down your goals or map out your endpoint on paper, a magic genie doesn't appear and give you everything you want. You still have to take action. But what it does is it puts your goals into your awareness. It puts it into a part of your brain called your reticular activating system, specifically your reticular formation. This is the part of your brain that makes you aware of things. And what you'll notice is that mapping out your goal not only gives you a lot of energy and motivation, it also makes you start seeing opportunity literally everywhere. You'll start seeing ways to get to this end that you have envisioned for yourself. When you know where you want to be, you will start seeing opportunities where you once saw only dead ends. Another great way to visualize your endpoint is to use an endpoint prop. A great example of the use of an endpoint prop to achieve the lifestyle of their dreams is that of Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is one of the most successful comedians of all time. But this wasn't always the case. In the 1980s, he was working as a busboy and doing other odd jobs in Los Angeles, and he was poor. In fact, at one point in his life, he was so poor that he was living in his car with his family. But as he was working in Los Angeles every night, when he'd get off work, he would drive and overlook the Hollywood Hills. And once he arrived there, he would write down and review his goals. One particular night, he took it a step further and he created an endpoint prop. He took out a check from his checkbook and he wrote himself out of a check for $10 million. He post-dated it for Thanksgiving 1995. And in the memo, he put for acting services rendered. And sure enough, almost 10 years later, in October 1995, he received a check for $10 million for acting in a movie, Dumb and Dumber. So take a moment now and think about what you want your endpoint to be. Who is the person that your friends and family are honoring at your 80th birthday? Where will you be 10 years from now? How have you always wanted to live your life? What is the end you'll be working towards starting today? So this is a really powerful technique that will change the course and shape of your life. And if you enjoy this video, you'll love my next video on my favorite time management techniques. These are the same techniques I use every day to manage my time and life a lot better. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye-bye.